I identify as gay. Pretty simple. My father demanded to know what was wrong. I did not know that there was pills or medication to prevent HIV. We live with this stigma, shame, fears, and that is when the doctor actually connected me to a PrEP navigator. Straight people, they have anal sex too. And this man from Honduras decided to look out after me for my first time in the bathhouse. Pretty much being a side is everything but penetration. PrEP is another way that it's protecting me. We all have sex. Everyone has sex. Not all doctors are familiar with what PrEP is.
We're back for Season 8 of the Confessions podcast, and this time, it's the PrEP edition. HIV cases may be dropping overall, but not for the Latino community in the United States. Even though more people know about PrEP, too many are still missing out on this game-changing protection. This season isn't just about PrEP. It's about sex, sexuality, intimacy, and desire. We're talking sex, pleasure, identity, and everything in between, from kinks and fetishes to how PrEP fits into real people's lives. This is where the stories get raw, honest, and unapologetically hot. Whether you're curious, cautious, or already living your PrEP life, this season is for you. Turn up the volume, lean in close. Welcome to Confessions, the PrEP edition.
My name is Emilio. I'm 28 years old. I'm gay, Latino, and an immigrant living in Los Angeles, California. I was raised in Mexicali, Baja California. That is where actually I was born. It's a border city. It borders Calexico, California. So I grew up between the US and Mexico. I had a passport really early on, so I would go back and forth because my dad was working in the US, but we were going to school in Mexico and just living in Mexico. So I could say I grew up very different lifestyle than maybe a lot of other parts of Mexico, just because the border city lifestyle is very different. I actually moved to LA for college. Funny story, when I was in high school, I was a freshman in high school, and there was this friend of mine who was a senior, or I guess more of a mentor. And pretty much this summer, as she was about to graduate high school, she told me she was going to CSUN. I had no idea what CSUN was. Just because of where I'm from, the closest city or closest big city is San Diego. So a lot of folks, they usually go to SDSU, UC San Diego, or even Arizona, because we're also next to Arizona as well. I love the glam, I love TV, film, celebrities. So ever since I was little, I always wanted to be in LA just for the spectacle of it all. And I do come from a low income family. My mom was a caretaker, and then my dad, he's always been a truck driver and just recently retired. So we did have a pretty humble lifestyle. I have an older sister, she is 32 years old, and have a younger sister who's 21 who also went to CSUN. I identify as gay, pretty simple. I identify as a man. My experiences with PrEP and PEP and HIV prevention services haven't always been the easiest. When I was in college, I received my first HIV test in 2014, and I actually went to a community health van in West Hollywood. I didn't know where to go get tested. I had no idea about any of these services. I just knew that one time I happened to drive by West Hollywood and I saw a van that said testing, and I remember that. So I didn't have a car, so I took the metro from CSUN to West Hollywood, and it was a 2-hour ride both ways. But I was determined to get that test because during that time I had my first few interactions with men, since I was still discovering myself at that time, my freshman year of college. I got tested, my result was negative, but 2 weeks later I received a call from that clinic van. They had told me that I was actually diagnosed with an STI, specifically gonorrhea, and I didn't know anything about any STIs. I honestly thought it was the end of the world. You know what we learn in through high school, middle school, that sex is bad. Wait until marriage, and if you don't, you're gonna get all these symptoms, and they show you all these horrible pictures. So that was my first thought. It was very clouded judgment at that time when I first received that diagnosis. I had a meeting with one of my peers at that time who had experiences before with STIs, and they kind of counseled me. you're gonna be fine with treatment. Go to the clinic, tell them what you have, and just request treatment. And I went to an urgent care in CSUN, and it did not have insurance, so that was another big issue. I had to call my father for money because as a college student, I was not generating any income. My father demanded to know what was wrong because he was like, if I'm giving you money, I need to know what's happening. I told him what I had, and thankfully my dad met me with compassion. He actually shared with me that when he was younger, he had the same thing. He had gonorrhea. And yeah, that day he sent me money, and I remember it was like over $200, which is crazy to think about now, knowing all the services that are out there. And I got treated. I still was a little confused as far as like, how do I protect myself moving forward? Up until that time, I mostly used condoms because that was the only way that I knew at the time about how to protect myself. I did not know that there was pills or medication to prevent HIV and even other STIs. I know now we have other methods to protect you from STIs, or at least to prevent them. There was sometimes where I would feel scared to have sex with other male partners. And that kind of sucked, because as a gay man, we live our lives already so secluded, it feels like, from society. And on top of that, we live with this stigma, shame, fears. Every experience I would have with men, I would have like panic attacks afterwards. I would have a lot of anxiety because I would think that every time I'd have an interaction, to me, in men, it was a potential exposure, even though I was wearing condoms or my partners would be wearing condoms. So yeah, I think that around 2020 actually, so 6 years after I first received my HIV test, that was my first time that anyone had ever mentioned this medication called PrEP. I went to the LA LGBT Center, and at that time I had done a little bit more research than my first time when I first got tested 6 years prior. I looked up, HIV testing online, and I came up with the LA LGBT Center. I received another HIV test. It was negative again, and that is when the doctor actually connected me to a PrEP navigator. I met with the navigator. He explained to me all the benefits of taking PrEP and how it could help me with having more peace of mind, addressing my anxiety, and just allowing me to have more comfortable and freer experiences with male partners. Even though I did start PrEP, I was not consistent with it. I am also someone who deals with depression, so because of my mental health, it did affect my ability to take PrEP every single day. Taking a medication every day is not always an easy thing for people, especially when you're dealing with mental health, or you're dealing with like other conditions, or maybe even just life in general, family, friends. And it can be quite hard actually to stick to that regimen. Discussing PrEP with my parents wasn't easy at first. I did have an experience during my college years when I went home for the summer, and when I left home, I left my PrEP medication at home, and they found it. They looked up the name of the medication, Descovy, and they saw that it's an HIV medication. My parents had a very unfavorable reaction. My mom was crying, my dad was yelling, pretty much demanding answers. It was really scary because I was on the bus on the Greyhound on the way back from Calexico going to CSUN. My dad called me. He was like, "What's going on? You need to tell me exactly what's happening." And then I was very confused because I had a really lovely weekend, nothing had happened. I was going back to college, really excited. And I'm like, "What's going on? I have no idea what you're talking about." Then my dad told me "Oh, we see that you're taking HIV medications. Do you have HIV?" It made me feel shocked. It was an opportunity to discuss with them what PrEP means and what it does for me as a gay man. Decades prior, my uncle passed away from HIV. It somewhat became of a trauma within my family and something that was unspoken about for so many years. Up until this day, it's a very taboo thing in my family, which I'm very outspoken about, and it's something that when it does get brought up, I'm very passionate about defending him as a person and his dignity. So because of that experiences, my parents had a very negative outlook on HIV. I mean, I'm not gonna get necessarily into my uncle's story because that is his to share. He's no longer here, but he did have other male partners, outside of his marriage with my aunt. And so my parents mostly associated HIV with gay men. Funny enough, like my parents are very, I could say extremely sex positive, but in a heterosexual way, and that is what the difference is with me and feeling maybe uncomfortable in discussing sex with them because it's not necessarily like normal to them as much as their own experiences, but them already being so sex positive. When I was 13, like my mom told me about condoms, told me how that I should be using them if I do like ever encounter a girlfriend, but obviously that never happened. And like my dad like would openly discuss how he had an STI himself, and so I think that laid the groundwork, or like for me to feel more comfortable in discussing sex with them, even though my sex is different than their sex. But if you think about it, like straight people, they have anal sex too. They're doing freaky things. A lot of like our sex, it's not gay sex, it's just sex. We're not doing something totally different than what others are doing, what other straight folks are doing. I decided that PrEP was right for me. It wasn't until last year actually when I went to a bathhouse for the first time. Let's just say that I went out to the club and I indulged a little bit too much. In that state of mind, I took myself to a bathhouse because I was always very curious about that experience. Where I had multiple experiences with multiple men doing various different things, like oral sex, and there were some experiences in that bathhouse that I do not remember, and that made me feel really freaked out. Just because at that time I was not actively taking PrEP medication every single day. Once I got back home, the next Monday I took myself to Men's Health Foundation and I asked them for PEP. At that point I was very familiar with PEP. PEP is post-exposure prophylaxis. This is a medication that you take after any exposure you may have to HIV or any condomless sex, or just if you have multiple partners and there's no protection involved, then this medication is a great alternative to protecting yourself to prevent HIV after being exposed. And pretty much, I told them what happened. I told them that I could not remember everything that happened in the bathhouse other than some experiences with oral sex. And they made me freaked out, like, oh, did I bottom? Did I top? Did I do both? The doctor was very empathetic with me, and since I couldn't remember everything from that night, that PEP was the right option for me. So I took PEP. Once I finished after 28 days of taking this medication, I transitioned to taking PrEP. And after that, I've been pretty consistent. I've been on PrEP since last year in 2024. It's given me a lot of peace of mind, honestly. It's helped me feel empowered that I'm taking care of my health. From what I remember going to this bathhouse, it was in Houston actually. When we were waiting in line, it was 2 a.m. actually, because it was right after the club. There was a huge line of men lined up, ready to relax, have fun, do their thing. I had no expectations. When I was waiting in line, I met this man from Honduras. He was very kind to me. I told him it was my very first time going to a bathhouse. And I was very nervous on top of having a few drinks before. And this man from Honduras, probably around 41, 42 years old, decided to look out after me for my first time in the bathhouse. He showed me around, took me to the lockers, showed me how to take care of my key. And after that, we checked out the sauna, and there was a lot of men of all different ethnicities, all different races. I've noticed that the steam room was very steamy, not just literally, but also physically. There was men giving oral sex and other men touching other men, or just folks masturbating on this side in the corner just watching others play and things like that. I did join in some of that fun and action. It was very interesting to have that experience as someone who grew up in a very conservative desert town, growing up with so much stigma and shame, and now to be so free opened my world, definitely. It became more of a relaxing experience afterwards. Just to be in the pool completely naked, no expectations of the world, and no judgment. At least in my eyes, there wasn't any judgment. I felt really free in that experience. I've gone to bathhouses a couple of times. I would say not as frequently. Funny enough, the way that I go to bathhouses, I associate it with travel. I enjoy going to bathhouses in Texas. We just recently went to a bathhouse in Chicago. It is funny enough my way of meeting other people from other places, because every single time, like, not even having sex with that individual, we're just like talking in the pool, by the sauna, whatnot. And I've formed so many friendships and so many connections, like in other states, that have been really life-changing. Like I shared that I met this man from Honduras in Houston. He was very sweet with me, and he drove me to the airport the next day. So it kind of helps to make friends all over the states. Please, if you can, just try to be aware. If you are consuming substances or alcohol, just be aware of your limits and also be aware of your safety, because there are other substances that are consumed in bathhouses. Poppers, potentially meth, pills, and things like that are sometimes sneaked in the bathhouse. If you are consuming something, please go with a friend, or at least go knowing your limits. I tend to lean more into oral sex nowadays. Like, I would consider more of a side now. And in case you all don't know what a side is, it's basically a person that maybe does not want to engage with anal sex. Typically, a person who's a side that will engage with like other forms of sex, like such as like touching, licking, sucking, eating out your partner, like making out very intensely, like fingering, all you can think of. And you can use your imagination and be wild with it. So there's plenty that you can do. But pretty much being a side is everything but penetration. And so at these bathhouses, I do act more of a side, where I do enjoy being loved on by different partners. In those experiences, I mostly have oral sex with men, receiving and giving. And I've had a couple of experiences bottoming actually at these bathhouses. But they were not always so favorable, because I'm a very sensitive person and I tend to want connection. A lot of these bathhouses, these experiences, they can be quick. Once the guy nuts, like they leave, and then you're just kind of there, laying on the bed, waiting for the next person, or maybe just relaxing and seeing what you want to do next. Yeah, I have considered taking injectable PrEP before in the past. However, I've had my hesitations with it. But I'd say my one barrier right now is that I'm sometimes inconsistent with my schedule. Specifically, with taking an injectable PrEP, you have to go into the clinic a little bit more frequently than taking PrEP through a pill. And so I don't know if I'm quite ready for the commitment, as opposed to just taking a pill every day on my own in the comfort of my house, and just going to my doctor's appointment maybe every 3 months. And if I've missed my appointment, my clinic always allows me, very flexible with me. That is the reason why I'm not taking injectable PrEP, mostly just because of my schedule. My sex and dating life these days can vary from different experiences from time to time. I'm 20 years old. I'm a gay Latino. I feel that right now I'm kind of an in-between stage of my life, where I still carry a lot of youthful elements that I always had throughout my 20s, but I'm also getting to a very exciting age where I've gained a lot of wisdom and maturity throughout these years. There's some days where I feel like having orgies, and there's some other days when I just want to come home to one person. I myself am still figuring out if I'm into monogamy or if I'm non-monogamous, and that is something I would love to explore as I start dating again. I've been in a quiet period these last few months, only because of changes with jobs, changes in general that has made me look inward these last couple of months. But I would say that a lot of my experiences are through online dating, such as Grindr, Jack'd, Tinder, and just recently Facebook dating. Maybe I'm getting a little bit older, so I'm tapping into different platforms now. There's some days where I can go weeks without having sex, and then one weekend I'll maybe have 2 hookups in one day. I am very inconsistent with it, I would say, but at least PrEP has helped me in keeping, being stable through it all, and also having that peace of mind of if I do hook up with like 10 people tomorrow, which not that I am every day or whatever, but at least I know that PrEP is another way that it's protecting me. Do I have kinks? I would say that That question's probably layered in my mind because I'm still exploring myself and I'm still getting to know what I like and what I don't like. What I can say is that I don't like pain, so please never slap me. I have been slapped before in past experiences. I did not enjoy that whatsoever. You know, in the heat of the moment, I don't like torture for sure. So I am not into BDSM, but you know, I'm a huge believer of like, don't yuck anyone's yum. So just because I'm not into it, I'm not gonna judge someone else for like being into something that maybe I'm unfamiliar with or I haven't tried before. You know, the world is huge. There's so many opportunities out there to live your life with your free will. I'm a big supporter of people doing whatever they want to do as long as there's a layer of safety, of course, and they're not harming anyone else. Fetishes, very interesting. Well, I can say I love men with beards. I love curly hair. So I think a lot of my fetishes are actually more like physical traits that I tend to gravitate towards like people of certain characteristics. But yeah, maybe like the moments where I am versatile, so I have engaged in, you know, bottoming and topping. And it's weird because I feel like my versatile ways can move through seasons. I would say there's some seasons where I feel a little bit more dominant. And those moments of dominance, I feel I'm a little bit more attracted to guys with bubble butts. I love spanking, licking, rimming, anything in between. And I love pleasuring my partner. I love hearing them, you know, respond to the pleasure that I'm providing. And the moments that I have bottomed, I love feeling vulnerable. I love feeling that someone's in control. I would say that this last 10 years, I've been in survival mode. You know, living in Los Angeles isn't always the easiest thing to do, especially when you're a single gay male, like doing this all by himself. I would say that when I do have like those more submissive experiences, it feels nice to let someone take over and not have to do all the work for once. So yeah, I'd say like my fetishes vary based on the energy that I'm feeling like at that moment. I've definitely have had experiences where like PrEP did change the outlook of the hookup. I try to lead with humility. Sometimes it feels a little bit awkward asking someone if they're on PrEP, just because that potentially opens the door for someone to disclose if they do have HIV or not. And that is very personal and intimate for someone because that is their health. One of my first experiences dating in college at CSUN, that was before PrEP was a thing, but during that time, even though I was not taking PrEP, I did ask a very stigmatized question at that to the partner I was with. I asked them, "Are you clean?" I regret that very much now looking back at it, you know, because I didn't know the language. I didn't know how stigmatizing that question is and was and will ever be. In that moment, this partner of mine, he started crying. And I didn't understand why he started crying randomly. And he actually told me that he had HIV. At that moment, I didn't react with any judgment. I didn't react negatively. I just tried to be as compassionate and hold space for him. Because to me in that moment, I just thought of like, wow, that seems like a really hard thing to go through. You know, especially back then, before PrEP was around, our HIV prevention services and whatnot. And so we just hugged. Even though I was not on PrEP, I told him that we can still have sex, but you know, the different ways. You know, we can wear condoms, we can do oral sex, like we can touch each other, you know, whatever works for the both of us. Let's go with it, you know, like I still wanted to be with that person. And my mind didn't change about that person just because they had HIV. And so moving forward, like through that experience, I've been a little bit more cautious about how I ask my partners if they're on PrEP. Now I'm at a point where I just worry about my own health, and as far as knowing that I take PrEP, you know, specifically I take Descovy, and I also take DoxyPep after every interaction that I do have. And if y'all don't know, DoxyPep is also another medication an antibiotic specifically that is used to prevent most major STIs like syphilis, gonorrhea, chlamydia, and it does reduce the chances of getting that STI by around like 85%. So it's not perfect, but it does add another layer of protection. I don't really ask anymore as much as far as if my partner's on PrEP or if they're HIV positive or not, just because I'm at a point where I believe in taking care of my own health. And of course, after the fact, like I try to discuss, hey, have you heard of PrEP? And that's usually how I'll come up with my partners. It'll be after the fact, just because like I'd say that there's a lot of fear and judgment that could happen disclosing potentially, and I just try to avoid that altogether for the peace of mind of my partners as well. PrEP has a huge role in my sexual life and sexual pleasure. Besides the peace of mind, a lot of times with gay men, the sex that we have has been a lot of shame. It's been looked down upon by society. People see us as unhealthy, they see us as dirty, and many other negative words that I can go on and on. And I would say that growing up hearing those things as a young gay kid, it's something that our community does internalize. I mean, some more than others, of course. For my case, I did internalize a lot of those beliefs. Growing up as a teenager, I was terrified of like what gay sex even looked like. So I remember my first time even watching porn being so scared. I'm like, wait, what's going on? Like, I didn't know things could come back in. And so with that, I'd say that with PrEP, it's been a way to kind of like take away that stigma, and as far as like making us feel more normal, you know? I know that we are normal, but you know, we live in a society that makes us feel abnormal, and including our sex, down to our lifestyles, like anything that we do is, we're put in a microscope pretty much. We all have sex. Everyone has sex. And so with PrEP, it affirms that. It affirms my ability to go out and live my life, have joyful, safe, pleasurable experiences with peace of mind and without worry. Just how another, like let's say heterosexual person might do the same thing after a club or after a party, and they're not thinking twice about it. So I would say that PrEP reinforces our safety within sex. Condoms still come into my sexual experiences from time to time. For the most part, when I have experiences with folks that I'm not familiar with or strangers from online, condoms are 99.9 used. But you know, when I've had more intimate partners and I am dating someone, sometimes condoms won't always be used. Even though if I'm in a relationship or I'm committed to someone, I still would be taking PrEP, just because, you know, you never know, you know, like, well, your partner could potentially have other partners that they might not be telling you about, especially in today's world with social media and everything, you know. Regardless of what my partner does, I know that I'm protected myself, and my partner would also be protected too if I decide to have other experiences outside of my relationship. Usually take PrEP in the mornings, but sometimes I have missed it and taken the evenings, which is not ideal. Ideally, you should be taking this medication around the same time every single day. But if you miss a dose or skip a dose, just try to take it the next day. Like, never take 2 doses at the same time if you miss a dose. Having a pill storage box has been really helpful, and being able to track that I'm taking this medication every single day as it's intended. And I know that's what like helped me stay on PrEP, like having so many of my peers that are also on PrEP. When I first started taking PrEP, I did experience some symptoms. I mostly experienced a lot of nausea, and after being on weeks on PrEP, like you barely notice the side effects. But I would say that the benefits of PrEP outweigh these side effects. But of course, always talk to your provider. It's really important that you go to the clinic every 3 months, or at least like what your provider recommends, just so that you can get labs done. And these labs will determine that the PrEP medication is working. And the doctor will also closely monitor all your vitals, all your levels, just to make sure that this medication is not having any adverse effects, which makes me feel even more protected knowing that there's like a provider that cares. Strangely enough, not all doctors are familiar with what PrEP is, which is really concerning. So I would recommend like folks, if they're interested in PrEP, like maybe checking out a community health clinic first. You know, usually a lot of the major hospitals, like they're pretty familiar with what PrEP is. But if you do live in a rural area, then I would say it's a little harder to access medication. I have not necessarily experienced any pushback with any providers about giving me PrEP. Like, I would say that I have a lot of privilege. In Los Angeles County, we have a lot of like funding. Well, not, maybe that's a controversial. We have a lot of services, I would say, for PrEP and PEP. A lot of it has been cut lately just due to the political climate and horrible decisions made by the top, so that I will not speak about. But pretty much in Los Angeles, we do have a variety of options as far as like community health clinics. For right now, I can think of the LA LGBT Center, Men's Health Foundation in West Hollywood. I also think about their other clinic in South LA called SoCal Club. There's APLA Health, Reach LA. So many community partners that have been there for me many times. I've received most of my care for PrEP at Men's Health Foundation, but occasionally I have been tested at Reach LA as well. Having their support was really beneficial during those times. The main way that I bring up PrEP through my hookups is mostly through my dating profiles. I do openly disclose on my dating profiles when I was last tested, and also disclose that I'm currently on PrEP. I allow the other individual to see that information for themselves, and then usually I do typically hook up with folks who will have that information on their profiles. It's not only if they're on PrEP, but also if they're undetectable too. So for me, like, that is something that I do look for. I would say a lot of my in-person encounters, it doesn't come up as much because a lot of my in-person encounters are more impulsive, in the heat in the moment, pretty much go in the bathroom, suck you off, or suck me off, or fuck, after that. But I would say that since they're more impulsive, PrEP isn't always discussed. Those same times have been the times that I've actually have accessed PrEP, and during the times that I did not take the PrEP medication, just due to not knowing my partnership status. If someone is unsure about taking PrEP, I guess my best advice, you know what's right for you. Look at the facts first. Latino and Black men, like, we do have higher rates of HIV transmission and other risk factors. And then specifically too, if you live in certain areas of the country like LA, New York, Chicago, Texas, Florida, a lot of their major city hubs, like, there are higher rates of HIV. So if you do feel that you might fall into one of those categories that puts you at risk for HIV, then I would say the first step is talking to your provider about PrEP. I want to emphasize that PrEP is for everyone. Whether you're a cis woman, whether you're a trans woman, trans man, cis man, gay, straight, bi, queer, all identities, PrEP is, it's a form to protect yourself for everyone.
This season, we talked more than just protection. We got into identity, intimacy, fetishes, and the real ways PrEP shows up in our daily lives. Because sexual health isn't just about prevention. It's about empowerment, connection, and owning your desires. Thank you for listening, for leaning in, and for daring to have these conversations with us. Season 8 was brought to you by the Los Angeles Family AIDS Network in collaboration with Reach LA. Be safe, stay sexy, and keep talking.